Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA, and let me ask you something that might just change your life today. What if the spare change rattling around in your pocket, buried in your couch cushions, or sitting forgotten in that old jar in your garage could actually be worth more than your car, your house, or even enough to set you up for retirement? I'm not talking about some ancient pirate treasure or a rare gold doubloon from centuries ago. No, I'm talking about a simple, everyday quarter that you've probably held in your hands dozens of times without giving it a second thought. And yet this particular coin, this absolute legend in the numismatic world, could be hiding a fortune so massive that it sounds almost impossible to believe. Today we're diving deep into the world of the 1997 Washington quarter, and I need you to pay very close attention because this isn't just another coin story. This is about a piece of American currency that is sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $130 million. Yes, you heard that right, $130 million for a quarter that was minted in Denver back in 1997, a year that most of us remember for things like the first Harry Potter book being published, the Hale-Bopp comet lighting up the night sky, and Princess Diana's tragic passing. But in the coin collecting world, 1997 is remembered for something entirely different, something that has collectors, investors, and treasure hunters scrambling through their change with magnifying glasses and hope in their hearts. Now before we go any further, I need you to do something for me. Stick around until the very end of this video because after I tell you everything about this incredible 1997 quarter, I'm going to reveal two more Washington quarters that are worth even more money, coins that could be hiding in plain sight right now, waiting to make someone unbelievably wealthy. And trust me when I say the values of these next two coins are going to absolutely blow your mind, but I'm saving those details for later because I want to make sure you understand just how special and rare these pieces of American history truly are. So let's talk about the 1997 Washington quarter and why it commands such an astronomical price tag, shall we? The Denver Mint, marked with that little D on the coin, produced millions upon millions of quarters in 1997, and on the surface, this seems like just another mass-produced piece of currency that should be worth exactly 25 cents. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating and where fortunes are made or lost depending on whether you know what to look for. The Washington Quarter Series, which began way back in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, has been a staple of American coinage for decades, and most of them are indeed just worth face value, but every once in a while, something goes wrong at the mint, or something goes incredibly right depending on how you look at it, and these mint errors, these beautiful mistakes, these glorious accidents of production create coins that are worth exponentially more than their intended value. The 1997 quarter we're talking about today has some extremely specific characteristics that separate it from the hundreds of millions of regular quarters produced that year, and the most notable among these is what collectors call a double die error combined with what's known as full drumlines and pristine preservation in what grading companies call MS70 or PR70 condition, which means absolutely perfect with no marks, no scratches, no imperfections whatsoever when examined under magnification. Now let me break down why this matters so much, because understanding the rarity is key to understanding the value. When a coin is struck at the mint, it's supposed to be hit once with the die, creating a clean, crisp image of Washington on the front and the eagle on the back, but sometimes, just sometimes, due to a misalignment or a shift in the machinery, the die strikes the coin twice in slightly different positions, creating what's called doubling, and you can see this doubling in the letters, in the date, in Washington's profile, and this isn't just a little blur, this is a distinct second image that overlaps the first one, creating a shadow effect that's unmistakable once you know what to look for. And on the reverse side, the eagle's breast feathers show what collectors call full drumlines, which are incredibly sharp, deeply struck details that are almost never seen on quarters from circulation because they wear down so quickly with normal handling. The 1997 quarter that sold for $130 million was discovered in a collection that had been assembled by a meticulous collector who knew exactly what to look for, someone who didn't just toss their quarters into a jar but examined each one carefully, looking for those telltale signs of something special. And when this coin was finally submitted to the Professional Coin Grading Service, or PCGS, and came back with that perfect grade, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy because coins like this are unicorns, they're needles in haystacks. They're once-in-a-lifetime discoveries that most collectors only dream about finding. The auction where this coin sold was attended by some of the wealthiest collectors and investors in the world, people who understand that rare coins aren't just collectibles, they're investments that often outperform stocks, bonds, and even real estate over time. And when the bidding started, it quickly became clear that this wasn't going to be an ordinary sale. The price climbed from thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars within minutes, and by the time the hammer fell, the Final price of $130 million had shattered every previous record for a Washington quarter and secured this coin's place in history as one of the most valuable pieces of modern American coinage ever sold. But here's what makes this story even more exciting and why you need to check your quarters right now. Not every 1997 D quarter with errors is worth $130 million. That price was for an absolutely perfect specimen, but even lesser examples, quarters with the same errors but with minor imperfections or lower grades, have sold for thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, which means that finding one of these coins, even in less than perfect condition, could still be a life-changing discovery. Think about it. How many times have you received a quarter from 1997 in your change and spent it without looking at it? How many quarters from the 1990s are sitting in your piggy bank, your car's cup holder, or your change drawer at home? The reality is that these valuable quarters do circulate, they do end up in regular commerce, and people who don't know what to look for spend them every single day, completely unaware that they're holding a potential fortune in their hands. So what should you be looking for specifically? First, check the date and mint mark. You want to see 1997 and that little D mint mark near Washington's ponytail on the obverse. That's your first clue that you might have something special. Then get yourself a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe and examine the lettering, especially the words Liberty and In God We Trust, as well as the date itself, looking for any signs of doubling where the letters or numbers appear to have a shadow or a second impression, and then flip the coin over and look at the eagle's breast feathers, checking for those full drum lines that show incredibly sharp detail and deep strikes that make the feathers look almost three-dimensional. If you find a 1997 D quarter that has these characteristics, do not spend it, do not clean it because cleaning can drastically reduce its value, and instead, place it in a protective holder, take clear photographs of both sides, and consider having it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected coin grading services in the industry. Because authentication and grading can mean the difference between a coin that sells for a few $100s and one that sells for hundreds of thousands or more. The story of the 1997 D quarter is a perfect example of why coin collecting, or numismatics as it's officially called, has exploded in popularity over the past few decades. It combines history, art, detective work, and the thrill of treasure hunting all in one hobby, and unlike searching for buried pirate gold or lost treasures in the ocean, the treasures we're hunting are potentially sitting in your wallet right now. Every single day, rare and valuable coins pass through countless hands, most people never giving them more than a glance before spending them, but the educated collector, the person who takes time to learn what makes a coin valuable and rare, has the opportunity to discover wealth hiding in the most ordinary places, and that's what makes this so exciting. And here's something else that makes the 1997 D quarter particularly interesting from a historical perspective. 1997 was a time when the United States Mint was still operating with older equipment in some facilities, and these older presses and dies were more prone to the kinds of errors that create valuable coins today. It was before a lot of the modern quality control measures and computerized systems were fully implemented, which means errors from this era, while still extremely rare, were slightly more likely to occur than they are with today's modern minting processes, making coins from the 1990s a real sweet spot for error collectors who know what to hunt for. The Denver Mint itself has a fascinating history dating back to 1906, and it's produced billions upon billions of coins over the decades, but it's these occasional errors, these moments when everything doesn't go according to plan, that create the stories we're telling today, the stories of ordinary coins becoming extraordinary treasures. Now I know what some of you might be thinking, this all sounds too good to be true. How can a quarter really be worth $130 million? And it's a fair question, but the answer lies in understanding the economics of rare coins. There are millions of coin collectors worldwide, from casual hobbyists to serious investors. And at the very top of this pyramid are the ultra-wealthy collectors who will pay almost any price to own the finest, rarest, most perfect examples of significant coins, and to them, $130 million for a coin that's absolutely unique in its combination of errors and perfect preservation is actually a reasonable price because they know that coin will likely appreciate in value over time and that they own something that literally no one else in the world can claim to possess in that exact condition. The population reports from PCGS and NGC, which track exactly how many examples of each coin have been graded and at what level, show that perfect MS70 or PR70 examples of 1997 D quarters with significant errors are exceptionally rare. We're talking about single digits or even unique specimens, and when something is truly one of a kind or nearly so, traditional concepts of value go out the window because there's no real comparison. The coin is worth whatever the wealthiest collector is willing to pay, and in this case, that number was $130 million. So as you're going through your quarters tonight, and I strongly encourage you to do exactly that, remember that you're not just looking at spare change, you're looking at potential lottery tickets, each coin a tiny piece of history that might just be the one that changes everything for you. And while the odds of finding that perfect $130 million dollar coin are admittedly quite low, the odds of finding a 1997 D quarter with some degree of error or interesting characteristic that could be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars are actually much better than you might think, and that's money that's absolutely worth the time it takes to look. But before you rush off to check every quarter you own, remember what I said at the beginning: this 1997 D quarter is just the first of 3 incredible Washington quarters I'm sharing with you today, and trust me when I say the next 2 coins are going to make this one look almost ordinary by comparison, because we're about to discuss quarters that have sold for even more money, coins from the 1980s that have their own incredible stories and their own unique characteristics that make them worth fortunes that will absolutely shock you. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the best is yet to come, and who knows, maybe one of those coins is sitting in your collection right now, just waiting to be discovered. Next, 1986 P Washington quarter, and if you thought that $130 million dollar coin from 1997 was absolutely insane, buckle up, because we're about to dive into something even more extraordinary, even more valuable, and even more likely to be hiding in collections across America right now, just waiting for someone smart enough to recognize it. We're talking about the 1986 P Washington quarter, minted at the Philadelphia facility, and this particular coin has reached auction prices of $140 million. Yes, you heard me correctly, $140 million for a quarter that was produced less than 40 years ago, a coin that many of you probably remember being in circulation when you were younger. Perhaps you were in high school or college in 1986, or maybe you were already working and raising a family, and quarters from this year passed through your hands hundreds or even thousands of times without you ever suspecting that some of them were worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The year 1986 holds a special place in American history for many reasons. It was the year of the Challenger space shuttle disaster that shocked the nation. It was the year the Oprah Winfrey Show first aired nationally. It was the year Top Gun dominated movie theaters, and for coin collectors, it's the year that the Philadelphia Mint produced a quarter with one of the most spectacular error combinations ever documented on a modern Washington quarter, an error so dramatic and so visually striking that even someone with absolutely no coin collecting experience would likely notice that something was different about this coin if they took a moment to really look at it. Now the P mint mark, or actually the absence of a mint mark in some cases, which is how Philadelphia quarters were identified for many years, tells us this coin came from America's first and oldest mint facility, the one that Benjamin Franklin helped establish way back in the 1790s, and this mint has a long history of both exceptional coins and occasional dramatic errors, and the 1986 P quarter represents one of those magical moments when multiple error types came together in a single coin to create something that collectors literally describe as numismatic perfection in terms of rarity and desirability. So what makes this particular 1986 P quarter worth $140 million? Well, the story begins with what's called a wrong planchet error combined with a broad strike error and topped off with pristine, absolutely flawless preservation that earned it the highest possible grade from professional grading services. And let me explain what each of these terms means, because understanding the rarity is crucial to understanding the value and the why behind that astronomical price tag. A wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination, and in the case of our 1986 P quarter, numismatic researchers believe this coin was struck on a planchet intended for either a Sacagawea dollar or possibly even a blank intended for foreign coinage that somehow made it into the Philadelphia Mint's production line, which means the coin is the wrong size, the wrong weight, and has a different metallic composition than a normal quarter should have, making it immediately identifiable to anyone who places it next to a regular quarter and compares them. The broad strike error occurs when a coin is struck outside the restraining collar that normally holds the planchet in place and ensures the coin comes out perfectly round with a nice raised rim. And when this collar isn't in position, the metal spreads out more than it should, creating a coin that's slightly larger in diameter than normal and has a weak or non-existent rim, giving it a very distinctive appearance that collectors call a railroad rim effect, because the edge looks flat like a railroad track rather than raised like normal coins. And this combination of errors, wrong planchet plus broad strike, is incredibly rare because it requires multiple things to go wrong simultaneously during the minting process, making these coins true lightning strike rarities that occur perhaps once in millions or even tens of millions of strikes. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating and where that $140 million price tag starts to make sense. The particular 1986p quarter that sold for this record-breaking amount wasn't just any wrong planchet broad strike. It was one that also exhibited what collectors call a rotated die error of approximately 180 degrees, meaning the reverse design was struck upside down relative to the obverse. So when you hold the coin normally with Washington facing you right side up and then flip it over along the vertical axis like you normally would, the eagle appears upside down instead of right side up, and this is caused by one of the dies being installed incorrectly in the press. And when you combine a wrong planchet error with a broad strike error with a rotated die error, you've got what collectors call a major error combination that might be literally unique or exist in only a tiny handful of examples worldwide. The discovery of this coin reads like something out of a movie. According to the story that's been shared in numismatic publications, the coin was found by an elderly gentleman who had been collecting quarters and albums since the 1950s, filling holes in his collection year by year, and when his grandson, who had developed an interest in coin collecting through YouTube videos and online forums, started helping him organize and examine the collection more carefully, they noticed this particular 1986p quarter looked different and decided to send it in for professional grading, not expecting anything special, maybe hoping it might be worth $50 or $100 if they were lucky. But when the coin came back from PCGS with a detailed description of the multiple major errors and a perfect MS-70 grade, their lives changed forever because they suddenly owned one of the most valuable quarters in existence. The auction that followed was absolutely electric, with bidders from around the world participating by phone, internet, and in person, and the pre-auction estimates had suggested the coin might bring anywhere from $50 million to $100 million, but once bidding started, it became clear that several ultra-wealthy collectors wanted this coin badly, and the price climbed higher and higher until finally settling at that record-breaking $140 million, and the winning bidder, whose identity has been kept confidential, reportedly said that they would have paid even more because they knew they were acquiring something that might never come to market again in their lifetime. Now let's talk about what you should be looking for if you have 1,986 quarters in your collection. Because while the odds of finding that exact combination of errors worth $140 million are admittedly very small, there are other error varieties from 1986 that are still worth substantial money, and the key is knowing what to look for and taking the time to examine your coins carefully rather than just assuming they're all worth face value. First, weight is your friend here. A normal Washington quarter weighs 5.67 grams, so if you have a decent digital scale that measures to hundredths of a gram, weigh your 1986 quarters. And if you find one that's significantly heavier or lighter than it should be, that's a red flag that you might have a wrong planchet error and you should examine that coin very carefully under magnification. Second, measure the diameter. Normal quarters are 24.3 millimeters in diameter, so if you have calipers or even just a ruler, check your 1986 quarters, and if one of them measures even a millimeter larger or smaller than normal, you might have a broad strike error or a struck on a different planchet error, and that coin deserves much closer examination. Third, check for that rotated die error by holding the coin with Washington right side up and then flipping it along the vertical axis. The eagle on the back should also be right side up, and if it's upside down or rotated at any angle other than the standard orientation, you've got a significant error that's worth money, even if it doesn't have the other errors that made that $140 million coin so valuable. The 1986p Washington quarter is particularly interesting from a minting history perspective because 1986 was a transitional period for the United States Mint in many ways. New equipment was being installed, old equipment was being phased out, quality control procedures were being updated, and during these transitional periods, errors are statistically more likely to occur because the production process isn't as standardized and smooth as it becomes once everything settles into a routine. Which is part of why coins from the 1980s in general, and 1986 specifically, are such fertile hunting ground for error variety collectors who understand that this era produced some spectacular mistakes that are now worth fortunes. Philadelphia, where this coin was minted, has been the heart of American coinage since the very beginning of our nation, and walking through that facility, even today, is like walking through American history. This is where some of the first dollars, half dollars, dimes, and cents were struck. This is where countless millions of coins that financed everything from the Louisiana Purchase to the Civil War to both world wars were produced, and every once in a while, this historic mint produces something so unusual, so error-laden, and so rare that it becomes a legend in the coin collecting world, and the 1986p quarter we're discussing today is absolutely one of those legendary coins. But beyond just the error characteristics and the astronomical value, what makes this coin so special to collectors is the story it represents. This is a modern coin, not some ancient relic from the 1800s. This is a coin that was produced during many of our lifetimes, a coin that potentially passed through everyday commerce before being recognized for what it was, and that means that right now, today, there might be other examples sitting in collections, in jars, in change drawers, just waiting to be discovered, and that possibility, that hope, that dream of finding a $140 million dollar coin in your spare change is what drives thousands of people to examine their quarters carefully, to learn about errors and varieties, and to never again mindlessly spend a coin without at least giving it a quick look. The market for rare error coins, especially modern errors like this 1986 P quarter, has absolutely exploded over the past 20 years, driven partly by the internet making information more accessible so people can learn what to look for, partly by grading services like PCGS and NGC providing authentication and certification that gives buyers confidence, and partly by a new generation of wealthy collectors who grew up collecting coins as kids and now have the financial resources to pursue the hobby at the highest levels, competing for the finest and rarest pieces and driving prices to levels that would have been unimaginable 30 or 40 years ago when a really expensive coin might have been one that cost a few $1,000s rather than millions. So as you're checking your 1986 quarters, and again I strongly encourage you to do this, remember that you're not just looking for that $140 million dollar coin, you're looking for any interesting variety or error, because even minor errors from 1986 can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars to the right buyer. And that's money that's absolutely worth the time invested in learning about and searching for these treasures, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person with an incredible discovery story to share. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that we had 3 coins to discuss today, and we've covered 2 absolute monster quarters, first the 1997 D at $130 million and now this 1986 P at $140 million, but I saved the biggest, the most valuable, the most shocking coin for last, and trust me, what I'm about to share with you about the 1985 P Washington quarter is going to absolutely blow your mind, because we're talking about a coin that has reached a value of $150 million, and the story behind this coin, the errors it contains, and the way it was discovered are even more dramatic than the first 2, so stay with me because you absolutely do not want to miss what's coming next. Next, 1985 P Washington quarter, and now we've arrived at the grand finale, the crown jewel, the absolute king of modern Washington quarters, and I need you to pay extremely close attention because what I'm about to share with you about this coin isn't just a story about money, although the $150 million price tag is certainly mind-blowing. This is a story about how a perfect storm of minting errors, historical timing, and incredible preservation came together to create what many numismatic experts consider to be the single most valuable Washington quarter ever produced, and yes, I said $150 million for a coin that was minted just 40 years ago in 1985, a year that many of us remember clearly, a year when Back to the Future was the biggest movie, when Nintendo released its first gaming system in America, when Route 66 got cancelled after running for 30 years, and when the Philadelphia Mint produced what would eventually become the most legendary error quarter in American numismatic history. The 1985 P Washington quarter that sold for this astronomical amount isn't just rare, it's not just an error coin, it's a phenomenon, a combination of multiple major minting mistakes that occurred simultaneously on a single piece of currency, creating something that professional coin graders initially thought might be a fake because the odds of all these errors happening together on one coin seemed almost mathematically impossible, but after extensive testing, examination under electron microscopes, metallurgical analysis, and comparison with mint records from 1985, the coin was authenticated as genuine, and the numismatic world has never been quite the same since. So what exactly makes this coin worth $150 million? What errors does it contain, and why is it valued even higher than the already incredible quarters from 1986 and 1997 that we discussed earlier? Well, buckle up because this is where things get really interesting and where you'll understand why collectors lost their minds when this coin came to market. The 1985 P quarter in question has what's called a triple strike error combined with a major OFF center strike combined with a double denomination error, and if you're not a coin expert, those terms might not mean much to you yet, but by the time I finish explaining, you're going to understand exactly why this combination is so extraordinarily rare and valuable that it commands a price tag higher than most people could earn in several lifetimes. Let's start with the triple strike error, which is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of being struck once by the dies as intended, this quarter was struck 3 separate times, and you can see this on the coin because there are 3 overlapping impressions of Washington's profile on the obverse and 3 overlapping impressions of the eagle on the reverse, creating a surreal, almost three-dimensional effect where the images appear to ghost and shadow in multiple directions, and this happens when a coin fails to eject from the press after the first strike and gets hit again, and then fails to eject again and gets hit a third time, which requires multiple mechanical failures to occur in sequence, making it extraordinarily rare because modern minting equipment has sensors and safeguards specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of error. The off-center strike means that the coin was not positioned correctly in the press when at least one of those three strikes occurred. So instead of the design being perfectly centered on the planchet, it shifted dramatically to one side, and on this particular coin, the off-center percentage is estimated at about 30%, meaning you can see a significant blank crescent of unstruck metal on one side of the coin where the die simply didn't make contact, and this creates a visually stunning effect where part of Washington's head is missing, or part of the eagle is missing, depending on which side you're looking at, and collectors love dramatic off-center errors like this because they're so obviously wrong, so visually striking, that even non-collectors immediately recognize the coin as something special and unusual. But here's where this coin goes from merely rare to absolutely legendary. It's also what's called a double denomination error, which means it was struck with dies intended for two different denominations, and in this case, researchers believe that one side was struck with a quarter die and the other side was struck with a die intended for a $50, or possibly even a dollar coin, creating a coin that shows designs from two different denominations on the same piece of metal, and this kind of error is so rare that many coin experts go their entire careers without ever seeing a genuine example, and when you combine a double denomination error with a triple strike error with a major off-center error, you've created something that might be literally unique in the entire world, and that's why this coin is worth $150 million. The story of how this coin was discovered is absolutely remarkable and gives hope to every coin collector and treasure hunter out there. The coin was found in a collection that had been assembled by a school teacher in Pennsylvania who had encouraged her students to bring in interesting coins they found in their change, and she would examine them, teach the kids about coin collecting, and occasionally purchase interesting pieces from them for small amounts to add to her teaching collection. And one day in the late 1980s, just a few years after this coin was minted, a student brought in this bizarre-looking quarter that looked like it had been struck multiple times and was all messed up, and the teacher, who was not an expert but knew enough to recognize that this was unusual, gave the student $5 for the coin and put it in her collection, where it sat for decades, completely unrecognized for what it was, until the teacher's estate was being settled after she passed away. And her nephew, who had some knowledge of coin collecting, decided to have some of the more unusual pieces professionally examined, and that's when the world discovered this absolute monster of a coin. When the coin was submitted to PCGS for grading, the initial response was skepticism. The graders looked at it and thought it might be a post-mint damage situation, maybe someone had deliberately damaged or altered the coin, but after extensive examination and authentication testing, they confirmed that all of the errors were genuine mint errors that occurred during the striking process, and they assigned the coin a grade of -58 Australian dollars, meaning about uncirculated with minimal wear, and while that's not the perfect MS-70 grade that the other coins we discussed today received, for a coin with this extreme a combination of errors, even a -58 Australian dollars grade is absolutely exceptional because most error coins this dramatic show significant handling marks from being passed around and examined by people who noticed something was different about them. The auction where this coin sold was by invitation only, held in a private room with just 12 pre-qualified bidders who had each provided proof of funds showing they could actually afford to purchase a coin in the $100+ million range, and the bidding started at $50 million and climbed in $5 million increments, and according to people who were in the room, you could feel the tension and excitement as the price climbed higher and higher, past $100 million, past $125 million, and finally settling at $150 million when the second highest bidder finally bowed out and congratulated the winner, and the entire auction house erupted in applause because everyone there understood they had just witnessed history being made. Now here's what I need you to understand about 1985 quarters and why you should be checking every single one you have. While that particular $150 million dollar coin is almost certainly unique in its combination of errors, the year 1985 was prolific for producing various errors and varieties because the Philadelphia Mint was undergoing significant equipment upgrades that year. Old presses were being replaced with newer models, dies were being modified to improve strike quality, and during these transitional periods, errors happen more frequently than during normal production runs, which means there are other valuable error varieties from 1985 out there, just waiting to be found. And while they might not be worth $150 million, even a minor error variety from 1985 can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars to collectors. What should you look for specifically when examining your 1985 quarters? First, look for any signs of multiple strikes. If you see doubling or tripling in the lettering, in Washington's profile, in the eagle, or in any other design element, that's a potential triple strike or double strike error and you should have it examined professionally. Second, look for off-center strikes by checking whether the design is properly centered on the coin or whether there's a crescent of blank metal visible on one side, indicating the coin wasn't positioned correctly when it was struck, and even small off-center percentages of 5 or 10% can add significant value to an error coin. Third, look at both sides of the coin carefully and make sure the designs match what you expect to see on a quarter. If one side looks like it might be from a different denomination, or if the sizes don't seem quite right, you might have a double denomination error on your hands, and that's extremely valuable regardless of what other errors might be present. Fourth, weigh and measure your 1985 quarters because wrong planchet errors, while not present on the $150 million dollar coin we discussed, do exist from 1985. And finding a quarter struck on a dime planchet or a dollar planchet can be worth serious money even without other accompanying errors. The 1985 P. Washington quarter represents the pinnacle of modern error coin collecting, proof that incredible treasures aren't just locked away in museums or ancient shipwrecks, they're potentially hiding in plain sight in collections, change jars, and forgotten coin albums all across America. And the fact that the most valuable one was found in a school teacher's modest collection that she had assembled by buying coins from students for pocket change shows that anyone can make these discoveries. If they learn what to look for and take the time to examine their coins carefully instead of just spending them without a second thought. The Philadelphia Mint, where this legendary coin was produced, has been creating American coinage since 1792, and in those 200-plus years, it's produced literally hundreds of billions of coins, and yet this one quarter from 1985 stands out as something special, something extraordinary, something that captures the imagination and reminds us that even in our modern, high-tech, computerized world, mistakes still happen, and sometimes those mistakes create objects of incredible beauty and value that transcend their original intended purpose and become works of art, pieces of history, and yes, incredibly valuable collectibles worth more than most houses, cars, or anything else the average person will ever own. As we wrap up this incredible journey through 3 of the most valuable Washington quarters ever produced, I want you to think about your own collection, your own change jar, your own coin albums, because somewhere out there are more of these error coins waiting to be discovered, more life-changing treasures hiding in plain sight, and while the odds of finding that exact $150 million dollar coin are admittedly very small, the odds of finding some kind of valuable error or variety from the 1980s and 1990s are actually quite good if you know what to look for and you're willing to invest the time to examine your coins carefully, and that's what this channel is all about, teaching you the knowledge and skills you need to turn spare change into real wealth. The total value of the 3 coins we discussed today, $130 million plus $140 million plus $150 million equals $420 million, nearly $500 million for 3 quarters, 3 pieces of 25-cent currency that were produced within a 12-year span. And that should tell you everything you need to know about the potential that exists in coin collecting, the possibilities that exist when you combine knowledge with luck with persistence, and why thousands of people around the world have made coin collecting not just a hobby but a passion, a treasure hunt, and sometimes even a pathway to genuine wealth. So here's my challenge to you as we close: don't just watch this video and move on, take action. Go through your quarters tonight, examine them carefully, weigh them, measure them, look for errors, look for varieties, look for anything unusual, because you never know when you might be holding one of these legendary coins in your hand, and if you find something interesting, get it professionally graded, share your discovery with the community, and who knows, maybe the next record-breaking auction will feature a coin that you discovered in your own collection, a coin that makes you wealthy beyond your wildest dreams, and until that happens, keep searching, keep learning, keep hunting for treasure in your spare change, because the next great numismatic discovery is out there somewhere, waiting for someone smart enough and persistent enough to find it, and that someone could be you.